My fiance and I have been dating for 7 months. I don't know how to solve the problem with him. Hey everyone. I just want to provide some context with the situation. We met through a dating app back in March. We still have not met in person because of some personal circumstances that affecting his life, his business, and other financial issues. His business was not doing well, and then he recently got a job. He was really apologetic about not having set a time to see me. But I have assured him that considering his personal circumstances, I understand and that I am willing to wait for him. The reason being is because I am technically still married, going through a legal divorce right now with a child. So we are both going through significant personal issues in our lives that we are trying to resolve. I told him everything from the very beginning because he was very serious about me and I just did not expect to meet someone that has literally everything I am looking for. We discovered that we are so alike personality-wise and character-wise and in every way. He seems like a really good genuine person and it really felt like we deserved each other. Anyways, for the past few months things seemed to be going well with his life and getting better. But ever since we were talking his feelings seemed strong at first and then every few months he would stop talking to me as much or tell me we can delete each other, and that he is not interested anymore. We started talking again after that, and the past few months have been great and things seem to be going really well. Last Saturday, it seemed like communication stopped all of a sudden. I sent him several messages saying that I was really worried about and to reach out to me ASAP. But he did not reach out to me until Sunday morning. I texted him a message the day previously showed that I was really mad at him and that I was threatening the relationship. He told me that he was fine and that I do not need to worry about him. He told me he loved me very much and to take care of myself. He also said that he was busy because he was working his ass off. I see that he is never online on WhatsApp anymore and that he may have changes his settings but I am unsure. And then Monday, he disappears again. I text him good morning, he reads my message and then disappears again. He has not replied to my messages since then. I am so upset. I also tried calling him today. I tried asking him what was going on but he did not really give me an explanation. He is probably okay. I now know he is ignoring me. It just came out of the blue. In the back of my mind I keep telling myself that he is probably talking with someone else. I have told him that he needs to match his words with his actions because they are meaningless otherwise. It's a long story, but I also owe him some money in cryptocurrency, thousands of dollars worth, which I was going to give back to him. He refuses to reply to me. I do not know what to do. I have been texting him paragraph-long responses with no reply. Comment. You have a kid and you're engaged to a man you've never met in person? Bad parenting choice. Extremely dangerous for you and your child. Aren't you at least going to find out what kind of person he is in real life with your child? People personalities take time to come out. He's not your fiancé. You don't even know him and it doesn't seem like distance is an issue that's prevented that. My guess is that he's married or in a long-term relationship and you're a backup plan. It's time to cut ties entirely. You're engaged, after only 7 months and haven't even met the dude in person? Come on. If it wasn't for the last paragraph I'd have suggested he was a catfish maybe. Whatever it is, he is playing games, block him and move on. Nobody needs weird games and tests. You handle the situation by walking away. I don't want to sound mean, but why are you so desperate to hold onto a relationship with a guy who can't even put in the effort to communicate consistently with you / keeps breaking it off? You are coming across as very desperate with all of the long texts etc. when he doesn't respond to you. I think you could really benefit from some therapy to work on your self-esteem / self-respect. Next story 2. My boyfriend kicked me out after moving states to be with him over what he found while looking through my phone. Is there anything I can do to get him to understand my situation? This is a throwaway account. I'm not from the US and not a native English speaker. I am willing to answer any questions if needed. I apologize for this being long, but I really appreciate anyone who reads it. I am willing to answer any questions if needed. Also, this is my first time posting. My ex, I will call G, and I were together for 2 years. We met in an online game near the end of the pandemic. We lived several states away from each other, but we visited pretty often and spent most of our free time together even when not in the same state. He is the first person I have been in a serious relationship with, and the first everything I have experienced. During our relationship we had great communication. There were mistakes made, definitely by me, as even now I'm still learning English, but we worked through everything without much issue. This was the longest I've been in the US consecutively, and in the beginning I wasn't used to many of the normal things a relationship required, but willing to learn and change. I was open about the situation I was in when we began speaking. I was living with my roommate and her daughter. I was going to college and my job was one that required me to be in the public and attend events. There was a lot of networking and it left me with little time to look at my phone except for the times I snuck away to send him updates. I also shared how I grew up. I lived with my stepfather SF, 55M, and stepbrother SB, 36M, in a less developed country where women had little freedoms until my teens. My SF moved us often to remain safe, but I was rarely told of locations or reasons and never knew what he did for work. This has made looking back on anything very confusing. SB and I were punished if we didn't follow his orders without question, but the outcome was still better than the consequences we would have had from messing up in the environment we were in. When visiting US in my teens I had some scarring and damage from the living conditions and SF's punishments and was able to get 2 reconstructive surgeries and some scar treatments. SF changed my name and I learned English with an American accent tutor due to a speech issue. I made mistakes as a new person to the US, and I accidentally gave someone access to my Google account where my photos were taken and used on multiple sites. This was reported and I am still being informed of altered pictures being used without my consent. SF passed away in my late teens, and I stopped conforming to the US norms he encouraged and went by my old name. SB had sole access to my finances, but I still used the ID for school and travel, which G knew about. I only spoke fondly about him to G, but never discussed him in detail. SB had control over my electronics. I was cut off from anything he didn't approve. I began using messaging apps and separate numbers for personal matters. I've struggled to explain the situation with SB, and it made me realize how little I know about my own life. I met B, 39M, after an incident with my friend's BF in which he admitted being gay, but hiding it. He had a military family and job. I didn't have a great understanding of it at the time, so when he brought up the idea to move out by claiming to be together I thought it was a great idea, as the only way my SB would allow me to leave the house was if I were moving with a man. I moved in with my friend and her daughter and we all had separate rooms. In the beginning I attended some of his family functions and work events, but stopped after I began catching him taking my phone and asking me for pictures to post on socials. He began pressuring me into marriage for his family after his father became ordained. He and his father showed up with a marriage license, but I later researched that the license only granted permission to marry and was incomplete. I began looking for other living arrangements until he left to take care of his grandmother and didn't make plans to return. I later had another roommate move into my sister's room after she moved out. I met G a few months later and never had contact with B, and felt was just a bad roommate, until he temporarily moved back after his grandmother's passing a few months ago. I made the terrible decision to not mention it to G, and I regret it a lot. I also continued to say what I was told by SF and SB to say if asked about them. The fear of SB finding out and forcing me to stop talking to G or using my finances for college against NE was a major stressor. I know I should have been honest about it to G. Around May, B moved back in after his grandmother passed, and in July my SB passed. G offered to move with him. I have to add that this wasn't my only option. I could return to the previous address, and I had friends who were happy to have me, but I decided to move states to be with G. A few days after moving in I felt like he began distancing himself. He eventually confronted me with an explicit picture and personal messages with a man about a marriage. He brought in a mutual friend MF, 34M, for his opinion. This potentially worsened the situation and helped contribute to their assumptions about me due to their previous bad relationships. In hindsight, G assumed the worst even before this. G lied about how he got the pictures at first by saying MF hacked me, but after threatening to go to the police G admitted it wasn't true. It took a further day for me to find out that G had gone through my phone, but what he was showing me made me feel like I was in a nightmare. He began to bring up messages I was unaware of. I know if I was in his position I would most likely not believe me either. During the next days G confronted me many times with things, and I told him about the situation I had with B. He ended up trying to call B, but only got a response through text in which B acted disinterested even after G told him he was kicking me out because I had been cheating on him for our 2-year relationship. B said something about me being his wife, and for him to move on, which really made me mad. I risked my safety twice to tell B's BFs about our arrangement and he didn't do the same for me. I called B right after and he acted like nothing happened. I messaged him and tried to show G that there is no way B would act like he didn't care and still help me if he just found out the person he was seeing someone else. I don't even know what to say at this point. I've never cheated or wanted to even look at anyone besides G. He has been my one and only everything, and the thought of this still makes me sick writing it. In the end, G wanted me to leave. I will admit that I was devastated, and tried hard to show him things and convince him, but there was never any raised voices or fighting. I left and went back to my original state, but chose to stay with a friend. This is where I am now. It has been over a month since this happened, and I have learned a lot. This is where I need help. I don't expect him to ever listen to me again, but if there's even a possibility of changing the beliefs he has right now, I am willing to try. I noticed that he assumed things before getting context often in our relationship. A few things he told me before I left, some things I learned after leaving and why it doesn't make sense. He thinks I never loved him, and that he was the side guy. That B and I were working some scheme to try to get money from him or something and that he would end up just like B if he was with me. B was what I thought was a friend and nothing more. I never spent time with him alone, and I never tried to wrong him. I spent full days and nights with G. I never asked him for anything monetarily, and he agreed I never did that, but he was always thoughtful and sent flowers and sometimes presents to my house. There is no way I could hide the time I spent with him, or the things he got me. I also was able to get messages from B admitting to us never being together, although I had to pull it out of him. He has always been severely paranoid about someone outing him, which I would never do. He thinks I was married. I do remember the license B showed me, however it was not filled out completely and seals were missing from it. It was only the license, and not the certificate, and I never signed anything on it. He found mail from a divorce lawyer that I never opened, but I later heard from B that his parents were worried about his investment in the house after I told B I was moving to be with G. At the time they thought we were together, so they consulted lawyer to draft a separation before they let B know they were doing so. B later changed it to just be the separation of assets after finding out B never had the license sent in, so any marriage wasn't legal. All of the conversations in the messages and pictures sent were not explicit, except for one picture where he supposedly confronted me, but I explain more about it next. He thinks he wasn't my first. Okay, I am clueless about male anatomy and how things work. Before him I had no idea how to do things, and I never had the opportunity to be with anyone until the past few years. I was a bit fearful of men before moving to the US, and due to injuries I had before I was able to get surgery, there was no way I felt comfortable being close to people. Also, the first time hurt. Like a lot. There was definitely a way of telling it was my first, but I won't go into details. He thinks I had cosmetic surgery. The video he showed me from a few years ago, he at first said he thinks I got my nose done. I never did, and MF agreed right away. He agreed after. I told him the reconstructive surgeries I had and scar treatment were the only ones. I didn't change anything about my initial appearance besides having to fill in a scar on my face until I fix it later. He said he still thinks I might have. I am willing to show him my medical records. I have nothing to hide with it, and I have the reconstructive surgery records. I'm still working through some mental blocks with being vulnerable around people, which means I'm probably not as open physically as I think others probably are, but I shared this with him too. The messages he found between B and me. I was aware B got a new phone prior to me leaving the state. When I returned I asked to pick up the last few things B was going to mail to me. He was at work when I went to pick it up, and I am ashamed that found his old phone and went through it. When looking through our messages to each other I noticed long conversations on B's phone that didn't show up on mine. I did call and question B about this, and he admitted that during the time his father stayed in the guest room after a surgery he saw that I was speaking to a guy. This was a person I had a brief LDR with during the pandemic, and nothing physical. His parents were upset about the situation and wanted to confront me, but he told them he would do it. Instead of telling me the situation above, he took my phone and messages back and forth a conversation where I admitted how sorry I was and how much I like him, etc. I assume he planned to show his parents as proof, or something. There was a picture of a ring. It belonged to my deceased mother. I remember taking it to send to my father, but I remember B mentioning that is what he should send to his parents soon. This was before he began pressuring for marriage. When speaking to MF after leaving, we had a misunderstanding and he ended up saying that they think I was a girl who lied like crazy to get into his house. I had no idea G was feeling like this and I feel terrible. I told MF I had no idea why they came to that conclusion, because I could have returned to my previous address, which everyone there had to temporarily vacate after my SF's passing due to possible security issues. I still don't know what SB did for a living, but I am willing to admit that it probably wasn't something legal. I also had friends who wanted me to move in with them, and my bio father at the time wanting a relationship, so this was not true in the least. MF also assumed that I moved in with G without disclosing the name I legally used. I agree that it would be terrifying if that were the case, but I shared that information with G before I even met him in person. I showed him my ID because I wasn't sure what information he needed when we were filling out airline information. A video was found of me when I was a teenager playing a game online with a friend where I was practicing my English and pronunciation. I made a few of these, and I told G about them after he asked where my in-game name came from. The video was edited to be just the highlights, and at one point the friend says, "It's okay, you sound great." This was due to a lot of mess ups. They began saying the way I had been speaking for the years I knew them, which had never changed, was not true despite me calling both my father and close friend on the phone and speaking the same way I did to them. This recording was before my SF passed, and I was trying to integrate better in the hopes he would keep us in the US. I messaged the person in the video in hopes they had them still, but he hasn't uploaded in 5 years and I haven't heard anything back yet. My legal name was something I have always been confused about. I was told to go by it by my SF, and did so until he passed. I never looked into it much until recently, which was something I take full responsibility for how irresponsible it was. My SF introduced me to my bio mom who I spent time when visiting the US, but she passed away in 2017. I don't want to go into the legalities of the situation because it is something I am having to deal with now, but I will say that the time frame SF gave me, and the information on the ID doesn't make sense. I was able to find her sister who let me know they took a DNA test a few years ago, and suggested I do the same. After some research I found that the test they chose is reputable for results like this, and it turns out that I am not biologically related to my mother. This is all something I can prove to G, as he began doubting everything. It also explains a few other similar things I won't go into here. I don't blame him because I was confused as well. He brought up a lot of valid points, and until recently I didn't know much about the US legal system or how identification works. The pictures and galleries he found on my phone. He showed me screenshots he took from my phone where multiple galleries were made with male names. In them were some explicit pictures. Over the years following the incident where my Google Drive was compromised, I've kept records of all the photos I've found and been notified about. Some men have contacted me who have been deceived by someone pretending to be me, and I asked them to send me any information or pictures so I could continue to try to prevent this from happening in the future. I can see how it looks really bad if I were to view it without context, but I did explain the situation, and that I still get notified of it happening even recently. I didn't know about any of this. I found myself saying repeatedly I'm not sure to a lot of things that he brought up. I understand that it's seen as an easy way to get out of something, but I feel like I don't know enough about some things to even begin to ask about what I don't know. I'm not trying to excuse myself for not asking more questions, but during the time my SF was alive I don't feel like I had a lot of options. I've been learning a lot since his passing, and even more after SB passed. I never had my phone screen locked because I felt I had nothing to hide. In G's career it would be very easy to look up anything about me, and I was never worried about that either because as far as I thought, I hadn't done anything bad. I left an external hard drive at his house after I left. He looked through it and claimed to MF that it was filled with pictures of our life together. B and me, I got it in the mail a while ago. I forgot it existed and I think I used it once when I got a new phone years ago. I know I lent it to my roommate and B on a few occasions. Looking through it, I saw a lot of pictures of myself and my pets. Some pictures of B and a few taken from his ex. There were several where I was out with friends, and a few with B. A few were of us together in public, but nothing was physical or inappropriate and we were with a group of friends at the time. I remember him asking me for pictures to send to his parents, but nothing remotely questionable was in the hard drive, which is confusing because after he viewed it he unfriended me from almost everything. Now I don't know what to do. I don't expect him to understand or forgive me. I know I could have gone about things a better way. What matters to me now is that he is hurt, and I wish more than anything I could change that, but the only thing I can do is start from where I am. The things I told about him about how I feel and who I am were true. I may not have known my biological parents, or understood the circumstances of my life when I was younger, but I know who I am inside and how I feel. Is there any use in trying to find a way to communicate my side of things? Or would that make things worse? I don't want to hurt him, so if people think I should let it go, I will. If I should try to explain this, how do I even start? There's no way to find proof to everything because a lot of my life was undocumented. How do I show someone how much they mean to me if they never believed the time and effort I spent with them in the past was real? I know I am so dumb to be in this situation, but am I just screwed?